They tie up heavy burdens, very hard to bear, and they lay them on people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to move them with a finger. They put the burden of the law on everybody else, but they themselves feel like they're exempt. They've got a free pass. That's what Jesus is saying. Verse 5, they do all their deeds to be seen by others. They want to look real good. They want to get into it. They want to get into a group of people, and they want the best seats. They want all of those. In fact, notice this. It says they make their phylacteries broad and their fringes long, because if you had a phylactery, which was a symbol of religion to hold the text, they would make these pretty big. They would make the fringes on their garments. They would make them very, very long, because the longer that they were, the more holy you were. So they would do all of that. Then he says this, and they love the place of honor at the feast and the best seats in the synagogues and greetings in the marketplaces and being called rabbi or being called teacher. Some translations may have a footnote to the word master by others. They love the prominence of being a Pharisee. But verse 8 says, but you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher and you are all brothers. He says there's no distinction that's here. There's no distinction. So yeah, you've got all this teaching ability, but guess what? You're all brothers. You've got all these things. You know all the law, but you're not practicing it. So they love to be seen by others. In fact, in Luke chapter 7, if you want to go back and read Luke chapter 7, 36 through 50, it talks about the idea of they were outwardly righteous. They look the part. They play the part. In fact, that's where we get the word hypocrite. A hypocrite actually means play actor. So you're playing the part. You're acting. You're playing that particular role. So that means that the Pharisees are telling them to do certain things, but at the same time they're not doing it at all. Now you think to yourself, okay, so what's that have to do with where we are today? Well, jump down to verse 23 and verse 24 of Matthew chapter 23 for a moment. And there's this little tiny section of Scripture that's a woe. And not as in terms of horses, but in terms of you better be ready for this, and you better watch out for this, and you better really pay attention to this. In fact, Jesus pronounces the woes to the Pharisees. If you go to verse 13, to verse 16, to verse 23, to verse 25, 27, 29, he says woe, and he gives them an instance to the Pharisees specifically. But we're going to hone down in the verse 23 and verse 24 for a moment, because this is what he says.